Ace, where we talk about relevant construction topics in the industry today. I've got Joey Summers with me today, our Vice President of Project Controls. Joey, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So, like always, we're going to go over another article today. Today, we're going to be talking about fractional project management. If you do want to go read that article, that blog, if you didn't get a chance to when it originally came out, you can always go to ace-consulting.net, go over to the toolbox on the right side, scroll down to ACE articles, and I believe this one's also still on the front page. If not, you can always just use the search bar. It'll pull them up for you. It's a great read. But again, fractional project management, that's what we're talking about today. So Joey, tell us a little bit about fractional project management. What actually is that?
Yeah, so fractional project management, it can mean a lot of different things, look a lot of different ways depending on what a project needs. But essentially, it's helping to supplement your project management on a job site, whether it be you've got a labor shortage, you don't have a project manager, or you've got a project manager, but he just needs additional assistance. So like I said, it can look different from one job to the next, but it's just providing more project management support depending on what your needs are.
And fractional project management is more of an off-site than it is an on-site task. Is that correct?
Mostly, yes. In some cases, we have sent people to job sites if it's, once a week, or maybe it's once a month for a couple of days. But generally, we handle most of our fractional PM from here in our offices remotely. Yes.
And we've had, just from our perspective, from ACE's perspective, we've had companies that have used us for fractional project management when they still had a project manager on site. And then we've also had some where they didn't have a project manager, or a project manager was either let go or quit, and they had a pinch. What do you think the biggest benefit of having someone do fractional project management is?
Well, and you're right on the different scenarios we've had. So there's a lot of companies that they'll have a smaller project that doesn't necessarily require a full-time project manager. Mm-hmm. So like you mentioned, that's a perfect scenario where you can use a fractional PM, utilize us, maybe it's only 10 hours a week, maybe it's 20, 25, 30, whatever it is. But the good thing about it is we only charge for the time that we put into it. So we agree ahead of time how many hours a week it's going to be.
Yep.
We could set a lump sum rate for that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you just want to go straight hourly, maybe our services are only needed 5 hours one week, but then we have the next phase of construction is going to be super busy, a lot of stuff going on, and maybe that jumps up to 20 hours a week, and then it jumps back down. So that's a good thing about having a fractional PM versus having a full-time PM on there that, you're paying for somebody full-time.
Sure.
With us, you can just pay as needed, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And two, I think we've seen on some larger scale projects, you're talking 100 million, 200 million, even upwards. I think the fractional PM for us specifically, I think one of the things that we've done really well is being able to handle the owner so that the PM on site can actually do what they need to be doing with subs, because there's so much going on those large scale projects where if you've just got one PM or you got two PMs and they're on site, 9 days out of 10, they're going to have 7, 10, 15 people walking into their office from subcontractors wanting certain things, as well as the owners. So I think a huge benefit is just them being able to do their job while we're able to wrangle up the owner and be that face to tell them where things actually are.
Yeah, exactly. And, you ask any PM, I doubt you would get any project manager, especially in construction, say, I've got all the time in the world to do my job.
Yeah, right.
Everybody needs more time. And that's a perfect scenario where you do have a PM on the job, but he is overwhelmed, swamped, working 80 hours a week. Mm-hmm. They can reach out to us and say, I just want you to take this part off my plate, or sure, I want you to take XYZ off my plate, whether it's a trouble subcontractor, or maybe it's managing several subs, or submittal assistance, mm-hmm, or like you said, maybe it's going direct to the owner and working through issues with them. As a fractional PM, we can really be that troubleshooter for you.
And I think too, the delineation between fractional PM and a remote PM is another thing that we've changed our language over time to where we're calling it fractional PM now, because I think you get pigeonholed sometimes when you say remote project management, because then they're thinking you're never on site. It's just somebody that's sitting in an office and they are the PM, just remote.
Right.
When you say fractional PM, it means exactly that. Fractional, like you just said, there may be 2 or 3 or 4 different levels of tasks that they want us to complete, while also their PMs still have control over the project.
Right.
We're not trying to take control over the project, and I think that's one thing with our clients specifically. It's been really, really helpful when we say fractional, because it gives them the I'm not trying to have somebody take over my project, because obviously construction companies, we know the history there with on site. They want their people to be on site. So yeah, so some benefits that people may not necessarily be aware of when you're talking about fractional project management. What are some of those?
I would say, a big one would be specialization.
Sure.
So, everybody has different experience. With us, we've got a huge pool of talent that has very varied experience.
Yeah.
So you might be starting up a project and it's got very strict BABA requirements, for example, Build America, Buy America. It is very hard to understand all those requirements and to get it right. A lot of contractors struggle with that. Well, you can hire us for fractional PM services. We have an expert at BABA. We can plug him into the project. He can take that headache off your plate, and that's a huge headache. So, that's one example. Other examples, if you're fighting requests for equitable adjustment, change orders, time impact analysis with your schedule, claims against the owner or maybe one of your subcontractors, those are things that aren't typically planned for in a project, but you have to deal with them on almost every project. So those can be overwhelming. We've got experts at all that. You can bring us in just to focus on that. And, we can be laser focused on it, take care of it for you in very efficient, quick manner while you focus on the rest of the project. And then there's also certain scope types. Maybe you have a PM that you've got to put this PM on the job. It's an airport job and he's never done an airport. Or maybe it's a government job and he's never done a government job.
Yep.
We have experts in all the fields. Maybe it's a data center, and we can put somebody who has that specific experience on your project management team on an as-needed basis.
I think, too, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about cost efficiencies as well. I mean, just the cost of having a full-time person, it's a big burden for a lot of companies, specifically if they didn't have that in their bid, or maybe somebody quits and they have to hire somebody on, but the people that they currently have available are that much more expensive. Having the ability to control that cost from, let's say you are the PM and ACE is coming in with a fractional PM, being able to say, I want this guy for 10 hours. I don't want him for any more than 10 hours. This is what he's going to be working on, I think is a huge benefit for a lot of companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about real world use case? So obviously we work primarily in federal construction. We do commercial as well, but federally, there's a lot of times where contractors get themselves into pickles, where we can help them out with that. Could you talk a little bit about just real world? This is how it operates.
Yeah, so I'll use an example. We were involved as a fractional PM on a project on Hoover Dam, actually.
Yep.
Worked with a great company. They did not have a ton of government experience. They were really good at doing the work, but they really struggled in-house with staying on top of all the government requirements. There were a lot of delays on that project that weren't their fault. But they weren't as strong as getting the documentation right and showing the delays in the schedule and requesting the extra time and money from the government. So that's a case where they brought us in as a fractional PM. We kind of took a look at the whole scope of the work, everything that was going on, looked at the subcontractors, understood the history of everything, went through the contracts, and really helped that contractor through that project. Working directly with the government at some points, working directly with their subcontractors. And we just helped navigate that for them because we had that government expertise.
So that was a little bit of federal with a little bit of project rescue.
Yes,
involved
yes.
as well. What about scaling a business? Let's say that it's a company that's trying to scale from 1 million to 30 million.
Yeah, we have that scenario a lot. We're currently working with a client now who's roughly tripling in size in a couple of years, and they've got some good project managers. They've got some project managers that they're struggling with, and they're not necessarily to the point where they can just go out and hire 5 project managers to set up for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So they're utilizing us to kind of bridge that gap. It's obviously they don't want to have to rely on us long term. They want to hire their own PMs, but until they get to that point, we can help bridge that gap so they can move on from certain PMs that aren't working out. They can begin looking for new PMs to hire. And whether that process takes 3 months to, a couple of years, we're there and we can help out on all the projects across the board. And like I said, our hours on any given project can change from 1 week to the next, depending on what the client's needs are. So it makes it really easy to bridge that gap.
And so that was a little bit of temporary coverage as well, which obviously, if you need that and you have a hole, the fractional PM is a perfect for that as well. So, so to wrap things up, we think fractional PM is going to be a game changer for the industry in a lot of ways, and we're here to help. So, just 2 or 3 game changing aspects of fractional PM from your perspective.
From my perspective, like I said, it really comes down to the flexibility in leveling your resources up and down. It just that helps out so much. Reducing overhead cost, you can get very specialized expertise without having to hire a full-time person.
Sure.
So let's say you've got a rookie PM on a job, he needs a little bit of help. This can definitely help with that. And then, like I said earlier, having experienced professionals in different fields, whatever you need somebody hyper focused on, something that's specialized, we can really bring that support as well.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to that, I think too, risk mitigation is one aspect of fractional PM that I think too is a game changer, just because a lot of companies, federally speaking, don't want to get into the federal side of things just by the sheer risk associated with it. There's so many rules, there's so many regulations, there's so many different processes that you have to learn as you go, and the risk of taking on a project that's $1 million that you don't know how to operate throughout the federal process it's a huge risk for a lot of people. It turns a lot of people off from it. But whether it's with us or somebody else, hiring an expert in a fractional PM to assist on that first one, I think is huge. Like you mentioned earlier with the Hoover Dam, I mean, that was a company that was a great company, had been very successful. Federal government wasn't their jam necessarily, but they were trying to break into it, and we were able to help them. And I think now that they're going to be super successful with that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Joey, thank you so much for the time, man. I really appreciate it. Fractional PM services, we think it's going to be a game changer. If you would love more information about that, you can call us anytime, or you can go to ace-consulting.net, fill out a card. We'll get back to you as soon as possible on that. And then again, just one more time, if you want to read the full article on fractional PM, you can go to ace-consulting.net, go over to the toolbox on the right side and go down to articles. And you can see this one. You can see all the other articles that we put those out, blog posts, and you can also sign up to get those as well on our website. So thank you guys so much for the time. And as always, work with experts, work with ACE.
Thank you.